I was just going to say, Chetna, what you said was so honest and so generous. I really applaud you for being so authentic. And what you said rang, bell for me. It was just like, the solution partly is to have exposure with different kinds of people. Because, when our kids go to school with all different kinds of, kids from different races, they don't see races because that doesn't exist anymore. But we were raised in our little pockets. Like I'm Jain, so I was in a Jain community. I was in a Jain school. It kind of like, we were kind of protected. We were in a bubble. So you don't know the other. And in not knowing the other, you also have separation and biases and all these things. So perhaps that's why the younger generation is so much better than us, because they are being exposed to the human beings and not color.
On that note, I just want to say we are doing another episode just like this one with this first generation Indian kids this week.
Yeah, I was going to say things like our problem is because we don't experience that stuff firsthand. Our kid has the experience firsthand. They mingle with those, every culture, every race, stuff. So they understand much better. We always get secondhand. And my other point was that we're trying to bring a change, and one thing we can bring a change with vote. And I'm saying to myself, that's all suppressed here, right? I was looking at the ballot, I just voted, and I have no clue about any candidate.
Yeah, like Sudhir was saying.
Yeah.
We just
so
don't
you don't
care except for
know,
the president.
who you're putting in office, and how you go, you can Google it, trying to learn a little bit. And then what happened is you blindly voting. You don't know who you're putting out there. And when people go there, they don't have the same agenda that what we have in mind when we go out and vote.
It's difficult to find the
right. I haven't been able to figure it out. How to really solve that bigger issue.
So have any of you guys seen in the last 4 or 5 days? I know, or a week when it started, right? Have you seen changes in people's attitude? Within your circle?
Oh yeah.
Let's applaud for that.
I have a friend who, she's white and she is so disturbed by this. And she's like, I don't even know how to talk about this. Yeah. And she's like, I'm buying books like How to Not Be a Racist. I want to educate myself so I can actually, and she put a wonderful post on her social media. She's like, I can't understand your pain because I'm white and I have never had to go through that pain.
Yeah.
But I want to understand it.
Yeah.
Because I want to stand with you. And that is amazing. Like I have another friend who actually works in the area of diversity and inclusion. And it's amazing what she's already beginning to do in the place of work and stuff like that. But I definitely think that there is a lot of change that's happening around us from
fantastic.
The white folks as well.
Fantastic. Yeah. So I know you write a lot in your Facebook and all that, and a lot of people.
I've been away from that for quite a while now. No, I just realized, there are 4 or 5 lines here, and this thing always comes to my mind every time we talk about it. Before Chetna was saying, and DP also said something similar, and maybe you have all heard of this also and read it. First, they came for the communists, and I did not speak out because I was not a communist. Then they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak out for me.
Yeah.
And you can say this thing about every minority or anybody who is being outcast, basically.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what hurts.
Yeah.
Because we are not there for them. And finally, there is nobody left for us eventually.
Yeah.
But we don't see that far. We just set the alarm for the next day, and we are living a day-to-day life, caught as we are in just trying to earn a living, make a life. Chetna said when we came to this country, we were struggling. And we said, even right now, it just goes on and on. But it is more a mindset than really being able to, because once we have the mindset that racism is bad, we have to somehow get rid of it. we will be able to passing it on, just not to our children and friends. In general, things will get better. It is paid forward kind of a situation. So you keep on giving, or we should not be hoping for anything coming back to us.
Yes.
That's what I think.
So
No,
do you
very well
think
said.
this incident, thank you, Sudhir, that was really nice. This incident is not going to die down, or are we going to do our part to let it not die down this time? Because so many times it has
See, the thing
happened
is,
before, this
Chetna,
injustice has
for the
happened. And
incident to die down, I would want the violence and the looting to go down.
no,
But
yeah,
I
that's a given.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
And I
uncalled
want
for.
this thing to continue to simmer all the way into first week of November, if you ask.
Yes.
And
yes.
I only hope that the blacks totally lack leadership right now. I mean, they have people who come and rave and rant on TV. I mean, their very first sentence starts at maybe 110 decibel. And that is the way, They are always coming out as angry. So the blacks right now, they are totally lacking leadership. I mean, Sharpton,
Yes.
I mean, I don't know, maybe his heart
You
is
got
in the
that.
right place. But the way he talks and speaks and all that, Jackson, another guy. So I really don't know. I mean, they provide more fodder later on for the other side to ridicule them.
So
Neha, you were saying something?
Yeah, I just have to say, again, I live very close to the White House, and so we've been in the middle of this, and also a lot of the organizations that I work with are engaged. And I have to say, just be careful of judging things based on what you're seeing on CNN. There is leadership at the local level. The people that have been leading the protests down at the White House are very organized, have a voice, have a mission. They were not the ones that were looting. We all know that, right? We know the looters were outliers. There has not been any violence in the last 3 days. And I've seen, again, the leaders are at the local level. And so you hear Al Sharpton, who gave a beautiful speech, I thought, at the Floyd funeral. But, we hear that and we think that it's not organized, there's no leading voice, but at the local level in Minneapolis, in Los Angeles, in Boston, in DC, there really is a lot of amazing leadership there. And the last few days, that not a single arrest last night in DC, everything was very peaceful. They're expecting at least 100,000 people tomorrow. I'm really worried for people with COVID, but there is a lot of beautiful leadership that's happening at the local level. And so I really think that we should hold on to that and not just what we're seeing on CNN. And just the last thing I'll say is that I think that there is a lot of hope, because I think others were saying that, I have some white friends who've said to me, I've never really understood my privilege, and I'm really starting now to hear that. Like when they hear stories about, for Black men, how just jogging, driving in a car, you can't be treated the same. And so that self-reflection, I think, is amazing. And again, people willing to be uncomfortable and willing to say, what does that mean for me? If I make this change, how do I walk in that person's shoes? But also the other thing that I've been hearing a lot, and I think it's really important, is don't expect Black people to teach you. Like Black people, a lot of people are saying right now, look, I'm tired. Don't be coming to me and saying, teach me everything I need to know. Yeah. We need to learn it ourselves, and we need to look at our own privilege and say, how did this benefit me? Because I was raised by a doctor and I grew up in an upper middle class neighborhood in Pittsburgh. How does my privilege affect others? And how does the system support me or not support me? And how do we make sure that we can change that? And I think you're right, Sudhir. I see what I'm excited about and what's been different in the last, over the Trump administrations for the last 3.5 years, is what I'm seeing is really different now. And I think we have this momentum where people are not going to let up until there's change. At least that's what I hope. And I'll be really disappointed if that doesn't happen in November.
Yes, that's true.
My fingers
Let's
crossed.
do that. Yes.
My fingers
So,
crossed.
Neha, how do we get this local talent that you're talking about, who can turn out to be good leaders in place of all these other Black leaders who come on TV? So we have to make sure that they get a national exposure if they are better off. And because I'm sure the other people that I see on TV, they have got certain personal vested interests somewhere. I have no idea. But that's exactly what it feels to me. And the moment this Floyd incident happened, there was so much of ruckus being, they just raked the mud for Floyd. just to figure out what and just dig out what all other wrong things that he has done. He has been cited for this and that. Little did they realize that the cop, he himself has been cited 18 times for different kind of violations by his own department.
Yeah.
That has not made that much big a news so far.
Yeah, but to me, I think all those things are not important as long as like, okay, so they were talking about, but I have not heard anybody talk about who did what. It was just that inhumane action that was done that shook everybody up.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad that somebody had a phone, somebody could make a video, and we could all see. Think about it. If nobody had made the video, nobody would have known. And this would have been another incident of 100,000 before this, which have happened. So I don't think so. People are even worried about if Floyd was wrong or he was a criminal before or anybody all about the.
No, but the
all about
act
the
itself
optics.
was a
Actually,
heinous
there have been
crime.
videos before this also. There
Yeah,
have been
but this
videos.
time it was like just, I don't know, it just hit me the way it has never. I have seen other things happening, and I'm sure all of us have seen it. But I think this time I really connected. I really felt as if I am myself couldn't breathe. Literally, when you see that video, that's how you feel. It's like, so yeah.
I have a question on that, and I think we are getting to, and I'm not trying to create controversy, but I want to get a little bit of your thoughts on this because it bothers me also.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see this change or whatever is happening now? Is it I would call it revolution, but a political uprising, or is it a real to the core revolution? And if that is, then how do you justify violence? And not justify, but how do you even stand for violence? Why people are not saying, okay, even the protesters who are out there say, we need to stop these violent people somehow, somewhere, because these are the people who are creating a bad name for all of the right people. So how do you stand for all these negative things that come with it? So what is your view on where do we start? Yatin, you want to go, or Chetna, you want to say something? Go ahead.
Let Yatin go.
I mean, my view on that would be you have to have some type of structure, rules, and regulations. The things being happening, I mean, police brutality. I mean, there's no repercussion. People have been doing things. I mean, now I heard in the news that they have changed the whole process.
That whole
a
process.
little bit change is coming, and I hope for the more will come.
Will come. Yeah.
It need to happen. The worst part was for me, the people as a person and as a citizen, people you trust, they're the one doing this. That just disturbing for me.
Yeah.
And every time there's been a revolution, as you were saying, you always have the nonviolence movement versus the violence movement, right? In Indian independence, in the civil rights movement, like Indian independence, you had Gandhi versus others who wanted to be more violent. You in the civil rights movement in the United States, you had Malcolm X versus Martin Luther King, right? It's always that struggle, and I think we have to be patient and understand where the violence is coming from the other side, why the looting happens, why people want to burn things. Like when you feel like no one is hearing you, and voting doesn't mean anything. I understand why a lot of people of color, Black people, don't want to vote, because sometimes you're voting for like the lesser two evils, where the systematic change I'm talking about is not going to happen. So I think we have to remember that and be patient with it. I will say I myself have seen people, trying to calm people down. As I said, they got things under control in DC. There hasn't been any violence in 3 days. I think but we just have to remember that there's always that struggle, and not let the violence that you're seeing just take us off track from where we're at, because the majority of people are nonviolent. The majority of people are there with a message, but you do have to make change. India, like all of us saying this, like to make Pakistan and Bangladesh, to make change, you have to disrupt, right? And disruption is not always pretty.
Very well said.
Yes.
Very well said.
Okay, so I have a theory also. Like, I think it's sometimes when anything changes in history, the time is right. That's what I completely believe in. I think this is the time. What happened that for the last 3 years, we have been struggling with an administration which everybody is unhappy with. Most of the people are unhappy with. Things are going wrong slowly. And then last 3 months, everybody is like shut down or locked down in their own homes. They have had time to stop and think. They have had time to really pay attention to themselves. All of us have gotten that chance. It's a paid vacation that we are all having. We are working, but still, we have had time with the families. We are once again rediscovering that love of family, of people we care for, our friends. And this, when all this was happening, then suddenly this Floyd incident happened. People were already in that mindset of how do you call it, rejuvenation in their own minds and empathies, and this thing happened. So I think people are more aware of things happening wrong to other people. Before that, we were so busy in our lives, we really didn't care. But all these pent up frustration of 3 years and 3 months, whatever has happened because of COVID, now people are more aware what's happening.
That's very well
People,
said. Yeah.
yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
my theory, that
Okay.
people now are seeing, at least with me, that's true.
Right.
Till now, I'm not at all, I don't follow politics at all. I'm guilty of that. I just have no interest, besides what Sudhir and Manoj tell me sometimes. But or they force feed me
She don't
sometimes.
listen to me anyways.
Yeah, force feed me sometimes. But I
So,
think this is the first time, because I am in that calm mindset because of this COVID
right.
lockdown, and I'm paying more attention to news, what's happening to the world around me. So I think this is the time in history when people are really aware. And I've seen my
Yeah.
own friends who have done nothing like this before. They are going and attending all these protests and marching and really being vocal on Facebook and social media. I think it's time to change. I think
Yeah.
we have to make sure we don't let the momentum die. We have to speak up.
Deepti, what's your thought?
I really like hearing what everybody's saying, and everything is striking a chord. Neha, what you said so beautifully about all this violence is also communication. I believe when communication is not happening, wars happen. When somebody is not listening and somebody doesn't know how to say or express what their needs are, or somebody doesn't have a voice, wars can happen. And that is basically what's happening. The other aspect of it that I firmly believe, which also struck a chord for me, was when Chetna, you were talking about how your kids are not experiencing the same kind of racism that you experienced or you felt. I think there is a lot of power dynamic also involved. There's so much to say here, and I'm like going on whichever fragment of thought takes me with it. But cops doing what they're doing is misusing the power. I feel like human beings have always been so hungry for power, but the question is why? That's what we need to ask. Like, why are we so hungry for power? Why are we so hungry to, express our aggressiveness and strength and force? Rather, why can't we have a culture where there is much more harmony and calm? I don't know, but that's a question that maybe would be helpful to know why there is so much aggression, why there is so much abuse of power, especially for when it comes to police force, because it's not just here. It happens
Right.
pretty much
Yeah.
everywhere.
Everywhere.
Yeah. Whoever has
So
power,
is there,
yeah, they'll
yeah, so
abuse
is
it
there something
eventually.
that we could do at the training level for these cops, where there is some kind of, there is also fear. Cops are always afraid.
Mhm.
So the gun comes out first before the thought goes.
Right.
They're also trained to just fire first, right? Before even asking questions, because they're just so afraid.
So, one of the things that we haven't been talking about, that why cops are so afraid, is because there are too many guns on the street in America too. Cops
Ah,
Yeah.
That's
I hate
whole
that.
another.
That's a whole
That's
thing
whole
that I
another
protested
topic.
for that too. I went out.
One last thing I'll say: today's National Gun Violence Prevention Day. And I think one of the reasons that cops react so violently is because they think everybody has a gun. And
Yes.
We will not be able to stop Sudhir if we start talking about guns. So
Okay.
that
Yes.
No, you can't stop me. I will be there
yeah,
screaming for the entire night.
we all
But
are
Deepti,
in the
I
same boat.
agree. It's all about
Just to
power,
add
I
to what
think.
Neha is saying, there are too many guns. The cops
Yeah.
have got the military stuff now
Yeah,
because
Oh boy.
they
because
keep
of
on
the guns.
increasing the Pentagon budget and they keep on buying. And thank God, I mean, the next thing I know, the cops would be having one of these aircraft or something,
Right.
to bomb places.
Yeah.
Because look at the military gear that they come out in nowadays.
And
Yeah,
again,
you're so right. We're starting to get numb to that, right? Like I'm walking to the subway station and there is like soldiers standing with automatic machine guns, and it should scare us.
But that's one of the
Which-
demands, is to not have militarization anymore.
Yeah.
That's one of the demands of the movement. So I know we need to wrap up.
I
so
know we need to wrap it up. So I was going to ask one last question from.
I think Yatin had something to say.
Yatin, go
You
ahead.
were saying something?
no, I was going to say it's again became our politicians, right? I mean, there's so many bill came across about gun lobbying, profit somebody. I mean, they're funding the channeling the money, and that's why thing doesn't change, because politicians have their own interest.
Yep.
Yeah.
So one last question. We're coming back to Black Lives Matter
Yes,
issue.
they do.
The
And
revolution.
do not mix it up with all lives
Right.
matter. Black lives matter.
Right. One last question I want to ask all of us, including, is we see it as a revolution. We all of us want to change. What is one thing we are going to do going forward, starting today or starting last week? What is one thing you have done or going to do in the next coming weeks that will help with this revolution? So let me pick Deepti, go.
So I went for the protest. I'm going for the protest tomorrow. But beyond that, I'm teaming up with a theater company in Canada that is creating a group of South Asian writers to work on projects that actually deal with Black Lives Matter, but all lives matter. So that's what I can do as an artist. My art will hopefully cause transformation.
I think the best thing would be to on social media, and the only thing is I just might land up preaching to the choir kind of a thing. And it is on purpose that I have a lot of friends on Facebook who don't see eye to eye with me, and I don't unfriend them. We have our fights and quarrels and disagreements galore, but I never do that, because a lot of times I see, oh, this guy wrote something on my timeline, so I unfriended him. I mean, if you unfriend somebody, that means you have closed the dialogue. So I think it is just to keep the dialogue open, and because the moment I post something which is a little bit to ignite the fire, they do jump in. Right. And then it goes on and on, back and forth. I think that is the only way I can do it, other than just being a better person and more tolerant towards not doing anything which would increase racism anywhere around. Because in my mind, I'm pretty clear on where I want to go as far as racism is concerned.
Thank you.
So one of the things that, somebody said to me is using your privilege to help others who don't have it. And so one of the things is, if you're invited to speak, saying, well, why not have a Black person speak or have somebody who's more representative speak? But the other thing that I've seen a number of friends talking about is, when you see a Black person being hassled by somebody else, or by the cops or by somebody, as long as you're not putting yourself in danger and severe, I heard you on that. I think that's a really concern. But, just being there and speaking out and making sure that you're defending or a witness to, recording, Chetna, as you were saying, like just using my privilege of relative safety and not putting myself or my son in danger, but using my privilege to be able to support others that might be being hassled, might be having somebody saying something racist to them, just figuring out ways to do that in a safe way. And using my privilege to support others who don't have it.
Great. Thank you, Neha. Yatin?
The only one thing I'm going to say, I will not judge and get involved. I mean, that's all I can do.
Very well.
Very well said.
Chetna?
So like I started this talk with saying that I am not going to be silent anymore. And I'm not going to be silent anymore. I am going to use this little platform of Take Two Creations to keep talking about it. I'll have more dialogue. I'll try to understand, which I have never tried as hard before, to understand where all these social biases and all these systemic racism is coming from. Get at the bottom of it, try to understand it and talk about it. And I will try to talk to some of my South Asian friends who also have these biases, because we have never tried to understand them as well. And I admit that. So my first step, my part, I'm going to talk about it as much as I can.
Great. My goal is to learn more. I think the systemic discrimination I've not paid attention to as much.
Mhm.
We knew it existed. We have realized it and they have seen it around, but never felt that I was part of it. I never personally have never discriminated or been anti any race, actually, for that matter.
Mhm.
But I want to learn more about it. I want to learn why there is more discrimination against blacks than any other race in the entire
Anyway.
world, right? There is so much of discrimination. I want to learn more about it and bring it out and talk to people and present in a more calmer and factual way rather than trying to argue emotionally when people stop listening to you. So my goal is to just educate people and educate myself as much as I can in a positive direction. So that's my goal.
And Manojan, just one thing on that. Somebody said earlier, like where I just encourage people to look for alternative resources for news, not fake news, but there
Right.
are a lot, but
Mhm.
you can find some of these young leaders that I was talking about at the local level, etc.,
Yeah.
on other media platforms that I think could really help all of us as we're trying to educate ourselves instead of, again, watching CNN or MSNBC.
Great.
I know nobody watches Fox News, but there's
Right.
a lot.
Not in
And
this group, at least.
Neha, I would request you to let us
Send
know,
us.
or at least let me know, somebody we can talk to. We have this platform. I would really like everybody to start thinking about this, start listening to other people's views, and just bring this awareness to everybody. Things will change. I'm
Deepti, you
hopeful.
were saying?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to what Neha said, like, in terms of finding the local leaders, but not just going to the television channels, like we can find them in our own community. So
Mhm.
in the Tuesday's protest, wonderful people spoke, and these are not people who are like, big leaders. Like I have not seen them on TV or anything, but there was somebody who is a teacher in the community, and he spoke beautifully. We
Yeah.
can also go to them because they are much more accessible and
Mhm.
ask for what are the actions that we could take or what kind of support do they need, and that's how we create leaders, right? So
Right.
that's another thing. Like, of course, you have a wonderful platform to talk to them and interview them also, but just for people who are listening, if there is that urge to support your local leaders, and you can just find them in your community.
Yeah, as well. So I think it was a wonderful discussion, and I know we can continue. And I had like 5 other questions that I didn't get to ask. So
Yeah, me
hopefully,
too.
Part two, part two,
Email them
part
to
two.
us,
part two.
Manoj.
Yeah. So thank you very much for your participation, and it was very inspiring. And hopefully, we will continue this dialogue, and we will definitely. Would like to continue this dialogue in the future as well. So that's why we have created this platform as well. So it's not only for entertainment, but we will also learn from each other and make some changes. Chetna, any parting thoughts?
I just want to keep my hope alive. I'm the one, I'm always a dreamer, and I dream for a better future for all of us, for whole of
Yeah.
humanity, for all the races to live together happily and just enjoy life.
Yep. Thank you all. Have a wonderful day
Right.
ahead, week ahead,
Thank you for
and
having us.
bring a change.